Good morning, everyone. My name is Julius Austin. I am the Sacramento Promise Zone Coordinator for the Sacramento Promise Zone here in Sacramento, California. I know I said Sacramento a lot, but that's how we do it over here, early in the morning. I would like to welcome you to an awesome presentation titled EDA'S Federal Partnership Network. It's a great presentation that is a part of the National Coalition of Promise Zones 2020 Federal Convening. Definitely excited to get you started, and I'm excited to hand over this presentation to our moderator, Johnny. But before I do that, just want to handle some housekeeping items. I do want to notify you all that the presentation is being recorded. It is also simultaneously being aired over Facebook Live on the Sacramento Promise Zone Facebook page. The great part about that is that you will be able to view the presentation on the Sacramento Promise Zone Facebook page so that you can go back over any of the great information shared. But also you could view any of the presentations from the National Coalition of Promise Zones Federal 2020 Federal Convening on that page as well. So please check out any presentations that you were unable to attend live. Also would like to ask all participants to please remain on mute throughout the duration of the presentation. Though you will be muted, there will be ample opportunity to ask questions and make comments using the chat box feature. Our moderator, Johnny, will be moderating the chat box so that she can pose the questions and comments that you all enter to our presenters. Also, there will be a Q&A session at the end of the presentation where you can ask even more questions and make comments. If for some reason we run out of time and your question is not answered, we certainly will be forwarding those questions to our presenters so they can answer you at a later date. And so it's important for those of you who have registered, you're all set. We have your information so that we can get your questions sent to you and also provide you some other information from the presentation. But if you have not registered, please share your email address with your questions. So I know that you are probably already tired of hearing my voice and anticipating our awesome presenters. So I would like to turn it over to Johnny.
Thank you, Julius. Good morning, everyone. An early morning for some of you on the West Coast. We appreciate you joining us today for today's session and our special presenters from the EDA. I'm very excited. Again, my name is Johnny Lattimore. I'm the HUD Community Liaison for the West Side Promise Zone here in Atlanta. And I'm very excited about because our presenter, Milton Cochran, is actually from the Southeast region here in Atlanta, and I am very familiar with a lot of the work that they've done here locally. So I'm very excited for Mr. Cochran and Ms. Gilbert to share some great information on EDA's programs and resources and things that I think will be very beneficial and impactful for our partners here locally and across the country. So with that being said, I will introduce Nancy Gilbert. She'll take a few moments to introduce herself, and then we will go to Milton, and then we will go right into the presentation. So take it away, Nancy.
Thank you. First, we certainly want to thank Johnny Lattimore for helping us to frame this presentation for the audience today. We also want to thank our HUD colleagues who we work closely with, and of course, the National Coalition of Promise Zones for inviting the U.S. Economic Development Administration to join this first ever, I guess, virtual summit with participants and stakeholders in Promise Zones across the country. We're really pleased to share information about U.S. EDA's programs and partnerships. These EDA resources really promote local strategies for innovative and competitive economies that prepare promise zones, opportunity zones, and similar communities for growth and success in the worldwide economy, and that's what we're all about. As Johnny mentioned, my name is Nancy Gilbert, and I serve as the Senior Program Analyst for EDA's Economic Development Integration and Disaster Recovery Division. at EDA headquarters in Washington, D.C. And I'm part of a team of economic development integrators that support EDA's regional offices and our stakeholders to access and coordinate the vast array of federal resources that can support economic development. And I will share more about EDA's economic development integration work shortly after you hear more about EDA's programs and partnerships from my very able colleague, who Johnny also mentioned. I'm very pleased to be joining Milton Cochran from EDA's Atlanta Regional Office. He recently became part of the Economic Development Integration team, but has a couple decades of experience working with EDA's programs and partners at the agency, and in particular in the Atlanta area and the regional states surrounding that. So I will turn it over to him now to get us started. Milton?
Well, good morning, and thank you, Nancy, for those kind words. And I'd like to thank Johnny and the entire team with the National Coalition for Promise Zones for providing myself and my colleagues this opportunity to participate in this National West Side Promise Zone Coalition Federal Partners Convening event. Locally, the West Side Promise Zone is a 10-year federal designation authorized by the U.S. Department of Health and Housing and Urban Development. Atlanta is one of 22 promise zones set up across the nation, which are each largely characterized by large or high poverty and unemployment rates. The city West Side Promise Zone is comprised of 5 neighborhoods, including the Ashview Heights, Atlanta University Center, Castleberry Hill, Vine City, and English Avenue communities. Through the West Side Promise Zone, the city seeks better alignment across initiatives led by community-based organizations, which impacts growth opportunities in the community. Through the Promise Zone, the national, local, and philosophic stakeholders and community members are encouraged to develop partnerships which address social and economic barriers within their assigned communities. The West Side Promise Zone aligns with EDA's mission of supporting locally regional priorities and objectives and facilitating collaboration among multiple stakeholders. EDA's mission, has been stated previously, is to lead the federal economic development agenda by promoting innovation, competitiveness, preparing America regions for growth and success in the global economy. This requires effective collaborative institutions focused on advancing mutual gains for the public and private sector in order to create the conditions for economic growth and improve quality of life. Through EDA's competitive grant programs and targeted technical assistance, EDA works directly with local officials to establish and increase local and regional capacity, assist economically distressed regions create higher paying sustainable jobs, support bottom-up regional owned economic development initiatives, and serve as a catalytic seed investment, attracts and leverage private investments, and emphasize entrepreneurship and regional competitiveness. Next slide, please. EDA has a regional footprint with representatives across the country, with regional offices in Atlanta, Austin, Chicago, Denver, Philadelphia, and Seattle. EDA accomplishes its mission through investment in projects that encourage job creation and business expansion. Eligible EDA applicants and grantees include district organizations, Indian tribes or a consortium of Indian tribes, state, county, city, or other political subdivision of a state, as well as institutions of higher learning or consortiums of institutions of higher education, public or private, nonprofit organizations and associations that are acting in cooperation with officials of a political subdivision within a state. EDA investments are linked to its investment priorities, and EDA's investment have federal cost sharing requirements or matches. EDA also collects and reports on performance measures in compliance with the Government Performance and Results Act of 1993, that as amended by the Government Performance and Results Act, Modernization Act of 2010, which established requirements for all agencies to collect, analyze, and report on their performance. EDA's performance goals and specific performance measures are tied to the U.S. Department of Commerce performance management structure, and the performances are analyzed for economic and program trends and used to enhance EDA's program performance. The data are reported via department's publications and reviewed by key stakeholders such as the Office of Management and Budget, the General Accountability Office, and Congress. EDA's targeted performance targets are tied to its annual budget requests and appropriations, and Department of Commerce and relative stakeholders consider EDA's performance results when EDA submits its annual budget request. In other words, our performance is tied to our budgets are tied to how well our grants perform. So it's quite important for us to have good measures on the performance of our awards. Next slide, please. Through its competitive grant process, EDA evaluates all project applications to determine the extent to which they align with the EDA investment priority, effectively address and create the creation and or the retention of high quality jobs, and document that the applicants can or will leverage other resources, both public and private, and fund quickly and effectively and provide a clear scope of work that includes a description of the specific measurable project outcomes. EDA investment priorities are designed to provide an overarching framework to guide the agency's investment portfolio to ensure its investment contribute to the strongest positive impact on sustainable regional economic development and diversification. Competitive application will be responsive to the evaluation criteria listed under each individual funding announcement, including at least one of the following investment priorities. Recovery and resilience consist of projects that assist the economic resilience and long-term recovery from natural disasters, economic shocks to ensure U.S. communities are globally competitive. Critical infrastructure include projects that establish the fundamental building blocks of a prosperous economy and secure platform for American business, i.e. supporting broadband, energy and water, road and sewer improvements. Workforce development manufacturing projects involve the supporting infrastructure for skill training and related facilities that address higher needs of the business. Projects that encourage job creation and business expansions in manufacturing, advanced manufacturing, and enhanced supply chains. Exports and foreign direct Exports and foreign direct projects consist of projects that enhance community assets, such as ports, facilities that support growth in the U.S. export and increase foreign direct investments, and ultimately the return of jobs to the United States. Opportunity zones are our planning and implementation projects aimed at attracting private investment, including opportunity funds to grow business and create jobs in census tracts that have been designated as opportunity zones. Next slide, please. Next slide. Am I still live?
Can maybe carry on, Milton,
sorry,
and
Milton,
the slides will catch up.
Am I still there?
A little bit of a technical difficulty. Please continue the presentation. I will work on my end to solve the technical issue.
Can you still
Milton,
hear
you
me?
want to continue? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay,
Yes,
there we
Milton,
go.
we can still hear you. Please continue.
Okay,
Thank you.
great. I lost my screen. I'm not sure what had happened. I'm sorry about the interruption, folks. Congress appropriated EDA $1.5 billion via the CARE Act. What role will EDA play in strengthening and assisting communities recovering from the coronavirus crisis? EDA's mission is to lead the federal economic development agenda. EDA works directly with communities to valorize locally developed strategies to build capacity for economic development based on local business and needs. Next slide. CARE Act funds are appropriated under the Economic Adjustment Assistance Program, which is EDA's most flexible program. EDA will accept applications for grants to support a wide variety of assistance, including planning and technical assistance, capitalization and recapitalization of revolving loan funds, which will provide access to capital for businesses, construction of infrastructure and other economic development projects, innovation, similar to Bill of Scale, formerly known as Regional Innovation Strategies like awards, focus on technologies, innovation activities that will help communities prevent, prepare, and respond to the COVID pandemic. Next slide, please. It is expected to receive many and has received more quality applications than it could fund using CARE Act funds. To be competitive, applicants should propose specific, well-defined projects to prevent, prepare for, or respond to coronavirus pandemic, including economic industries caused by the pandemic. Proposals that are limited to providing general support for an organization and its mission are unlikely to be successful. Again, to be eligible for CARES Act recovery assistance grants, applicants must explain clearly how the proposed project would prevent, prepare for, respond to coronavirus, or respond to the economic injuries as a result of the coronavirus. More information on EDA's CARE Act recovery assistance can be found at EDA's website shown here. Next slide. Just some update as to the level of funding that EDA has provided at this point. This slide is basically showing that EDA is continuing to work with great effort to award CARE Act funds to eligible projects across the country. To date, EDA has obligated 756 CARE Act recovery assistance grants to states and communities across the nation, totaling more than $743.5 million, or more than 51% of the $1.467 billion appropriation. EDA is continuing to accept applications for competitive projects and has until September 30th, 2022 to obligate the remaining funds to eligible applicants. Again, visit EDA's CARE Act recovery page listed here to learn more about the funding opportunities and contact your EDA representative additionally on projects and program eligibilities. Next slide, please. EDA is actively engaged in supporting the development needs of communities in and around promise zone, opportunity zones, including those ongoing participation of agency senior leadership in opportunity zone roundtables sponsored by the White House Opportunity and Revitalization Council that brings together local elected officials, business leaders, community groups, and other across the country. EDA's flexible grant program support infrastructure, construction, planning, technical assistance, entrepreneur and innovation, and revolving loan funds. To help significantly increase the number of catalyst opportunities zone related projects we can fund, EDA incorporates opportunity zone as an investment priority and in the special need eligibility criteria in its economic development assistance program. EDA said that's comprehensive economic strategy document content guidelines were also updated to further assist local and regional planning partners build effective approaches to opportunity zones in their long-term roadmap for economic prosperity. I emphasize in opportunity zone, as in promise zones and other areas focused on economic revitalization, EDA encourages and supports coordination and leveraging of complementary assistance available through HUD and other federal agencies that can support resilient, inclusive, and competitive local and regional economies. Next slide. While EDA has no special initiative or program for promise zones, these communities can benefit from utilization of EDA's entire toolkit. The web link shown on this slide basically gives enhanced guidance in regards to SES guidelines for opportunity zones. This will help communities to maximize the ability to attract opportunity zone investment aligned with their regional economies, economic strategies. The U.S. Opportunity Zone 2 is a web-based tool on Stats America's site, which helps designated EDA development districts across the country, as well as local economic and community developers and investors target private investments to economic distress areas. The EDA Opportunity Promise Investment web link showcase past EDA investments in or near opportunity zones across the country, including designated areas as promise zones. Again, contact your local economic development representative to discuss how EDA grant programs may be able to support infrastructure and other projects to benefit opportunity zones and other distressed areas. Next slide, please. I would like to spend a few moments telling you about a small incubator project we're working on in the city of Atlanta called the Russell Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. The Russell Center is a program of the H.J. Russell and Company. The H.J. Russell and Company was founded in 1952 by Herman J. Russell, who grew the business into the United States' largest minority-owned construction company. Today, the H.J. Russell and its subsidiary employ over 2,000 in 10 cities. The Russell Center is located in Southwest Atlanta in an opportunity zone adjacent to 3 of the city's HBCUs, including Morehouse College, Spelman College, Clark Atlanta University. EDA has contributed substantially to this project. In 2016, we made a $2.9 million economic adjustment award for the rehabilitation of a 43,000 square foot 3-story incubator. And in 2019, we made an additional $1.5 million economic disaster award for the expansion of the center. The Russell Center is set to open this fall and already has commitments from entrepreneurs sufficient to occupy 100% of the incubator's capacity. Next slide, please. Long suffering from disinvestments, poverty, and high unemployment, Atlanta Pittsburgh neighborhood was also a victim of the housing crisis of 2008, with exceptionally high vacancy rate, declining home values. In an effort to help these challenges and bring more jobs to the region, community leaders have long sought an economic development solution for Pittsburgh's vacant 31-acre former trucking facility known as 352 University Avenue. In 2018, EDA Advanced awarded a $1.5 million disaster relief fund to UA Associates LLC, the NEA Casey Foundation, and Columbus Core Partners, and the City of Atlanta to support site development as well as its opportunity zone designation. The Pittsburgh community is transforming 352 University Avenue into the Pittsburgh Yard, a mixed-use development that will support small businesses, trades, artisans, and light manufacturing. The first phase will attract over $20 million in private investment and will be completed in fall of 2020. Next slide, please. EDA has a portfolio of flexible grant programs to support economic development of distressed areas, which consist of 7 programs shown on this slide. For an expanded discussion of these programs, you may visit the EDA website shown to access additional information regarding EDA programs and grant and EDA's funding opportunities. Next slide, please. Economic distress criteria for EDA public works and economic development adjustment programs include low per capita income, that is, per capita income of 80% or less of the national average, unemployment, high unemployment, that is at least 1% greater than the national average for the most recent 24-month period, and special needs or economic adjustment problems, including areas experiencing closures, restructuring of industry, or loss of major employers, natural and other major disasters or emergencies, significant population loss, or unemployment. Projects located in qualified opportunity zones are considered, as well as special needs. Next slide. One of EDA's competitive grant programs, the Public Work Grants, can fund essential infrastructure projects that fit within a broader strategy for economic revitalization of the community or region. EDA's Public Work program invests in critical infrastructure such as road, bridges, water and sewer systems, broadband, industrial park, manufacturing centers, skills centers, training facilities, business incubators, etc., for use by private businesses. Applicants must demonstrate chronic economic distress to be eligible for grant assistance. Next slide. It is economic adjustment assistance. This is EDA's. This is a competitive grant program with a rolling application process. The applicants are encouraged to work with the economic development representative in their economic regional office, in their EDA's regional office, to develop proposals and competitive applications for eligible projects. The Economic Adjustment Assistance Program is EDA's most flexible program in our toolbox, which address a variety of economic distress, economic development needs. They're tailored to assist, to meet an applicant's need, strategic planning, technical assistance, physical infrastructure, revolving loan funds, and severe distress and disaster recovery needs. In addition to its core programs funding, EDA has received significant supplement funding in FY18 and 19 to economic recovery in communities that experience federal declared disasters. This is becoming an increased part of EDA's overall portfolio. Next slide, please. Our planning and technical assistance. Through its planning and local technical assistance program, EDA assists eligible recipients in developing economic development plans and studies designed to build capacity and guide the economic prosperity and resiliency of an area or region, and strengthen the capacity of eligible recipients to undertake and promote effective economic development programs through projects such as feasibility analysis, impact studies. Applicants are accepted on a rolling basis. Under the planning program, EDA assists economic eligible recipients in developing economic development plans designed to build capacity and guide the economic prosperity and resiliency of an area and region. As part of this program, EDA supports partnership planning investment to facilitate the development, implementation, revision, and replacement of the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, or SES, which articulates and prioritizes the strategic economic goals of recipients' respective regions. Next slide, please. This recurring theme and the importance placed on the economic development strategy, or the SES, planning process can't be overemphasized. Projects found under the Public Works and Economic Adjustment Assistance programs must be consistent with the region's current Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, or SEDS, or an equivalent regional economic development strategy. Remember, the SEDS is a locally based, regional-driven economic development planning process that must engage all impacted stakeholders to build capacity and guide the economic prosperity and resiliency of a region, providing an economic roadmap to diversify and strengthen the regional economies. It is important to note applicants should highlight how the proposed project will be aligned with, integrated into, and/or will leverage other public and private investments in the community and region. Next slide, please. Local economic development organizations, university centers are important local stakeholders for EDA and are valued partners in helping communities and regions to develop strong roadmaps for their regional economies that is competitive, resilient, and inclusive. Economic development districts are multi-jurisdiction entities, commonly composed of multiple counties and, in certain cases, cross state borders. They help lead locally based, regional-driven economic development planning process that leverage the involvement of the public, private, nonprofit sector to establish a strategic blueprint, an economic development roadmap, if you will, for regional collaboration. The strategic blueprint, known as a comprehensive development strategy, or SEDS, is a well-driven plan, is a strategically driven plan for regional economic development. The SEDS is the result of a regional-owned planning process designed to guide the economic prosperity and resiliency of an area or region. It provides a coordinating mechanism for individual organizations, local governments, and private industry to engage in a meaningful conversation and debate about the economic direction of their region. To locate the economic development in your region, visit EDA's website shown below. This concludes my portion of the presentation. I ask to return this presentation to Nancy at this time. Any question will be addressed at the end.
Thank you, Milton. Johnny, and if you can go to the next slide, Milton just gave us a deep dive into EDA's funding programs and to our partners, particularly with the over 390 economic development districts, which are multi-jurisdictional partnerships that work with their communities to develop those strategies for regional economic development. And as he mentioned, with the CARES Act funding we received from Congress, EDA has already been able to add that additional capacity to those economic development districts, to our university center partners, to our tribal planning partners, and also to help capitalize revolving loan funds that are available for lending and working capital to support local businesses that have been impacted by the economic effects of the coronavirus. These are some ways in which we tangibly assist our stakeholders, including the communities you're working with in the promise zones. Another part of what I wanted to speak with you about now is that in addition to our funding programs, EDA also leads the integration of economic development resources from all federal sources, and including state, local, and philanthropic resources to help communities achieve better outcomes in places across America, and particularly in areas where they're suffering from distress or an economic shock, as Milton mentioned, those areas impacted by natural disasters and now by the current COVID-19 crisis. So many, many more resources have come onto the scene, and EDA's economic development integration practice is working with our EDA colleagues in the regional offices and importantly with our stakeholders to help navigate these resources, similar to what the HUD Community Liaisons have been doing with the Promise Zones across the country. So next slide, I'll give you a little more sense of how EDA does this. What are we trying to do with our economic development integration practice? We really stood this up. We've been doing this in EDA for our history since 1965 in terms of knowing that it's important to leverage federal resources for the broad economic development that is needed and wanted in communities. But we have focused on this intentionally for the last several years to really focus on increasing access of our stakeholders to federal resources, not just EDA, but those that can complement what economic development strategies they are pursuing in other federal agencies. We are looking to enhance collaboration among EDA with HUD, with USDA, with Department of Labor, and all of our federal partners, so that we can facilitate that access to complementary investments for our stakeholders. And we are also looking for ways to reduce administrative burden. So I'll talk with you a little bit about how we've been doing some plan alignment in terms of bringing folks together too, just so that you can better see who to connect with in these different programs, and doing joint outreach and co-marketing so that we can take advantage of the intersection of different federal programs that may be stacked or leveraged to help you achieve your economic development goals. So next slide. So what is our objective? Once again, it's to help maximize investments, both from the federal perspective. We know that there are silos and that many programs can accomplish different parts of the economic development continuum in a community. So we want to help ourselves, help you, help the communities to maximize federal, state, and local investments. And this will really help to accomplish shared objectives, including those stated in the comprehensive economic development strategies that regions are developing. In this case, the EDI practice really adds a capacity within EDA, and we translate that capacity along to the communities that we work with through an important resource that we have, which is one regional economic development integrator in each of our 6 EDA regional offices. Milton Cochran, who you heard from, serves the Atlanta regions, and we have similar EDIs we call them, in each of our other EDA regional offices, who are there to support our staff and our stakeholders through developing interagency partnerships. We have a number of methods where we help strengthen connections between communities with relevant federal agencies. And we have provided a number of resources on our webpage and in working with communities, where we post current funding opportunities, not just at EDA, but at other federal agencies for workforce, for infrastructure, for manufacturing, for the variety of needs and interests in the communities that we work with. We've posted a matrix of complementary federal programs and contacts. We did a review and found over 130 federal programs that can provide some assistance to some aspects of economic development, and this can be kind of a starting place to look for resources, and that is on our EDA webpage, and we'll give you the link in this presentation. And then lastly, I'll talk a little bit more about work we've been doing with HUD, with FEMA, and with some of our other federal partners to provide some guidance to communities on how they can align their comprehensive economic development strategies or CEDS plans and planning process with similar local and regional development planning that goes on, including the consolidated planning for HUD. Next slide. So there are a couple of methods through which we promote the economic development integration purpose and practice. You might ask, what does this look like in real life? And a couple of the signature methods that we have are going to be highlighted here. The first of which is these convening that we work with local stakeholders and our federal partners on to really build interagency partnerships and collaboration so that we can offer interagency referrals, connecting stakeholders with relevant program staff and other federal agencies, and convening these partners together for an exchange of program information and contacts. Partly that's what we're doing here today, but we can also work with communities in those type of settings to convene our partners for these kind of events. So we have some acronyms, names by which we refer to these when we're working with our local partners, and the first of which we call these Federal Interagency Resource Exchanges, or FIREs. So FIRE is a good acronym to keep this top of mind. It's basically a process that I said previously is primarily about sharing and receiving information, as well as establishing and enhancing those intergovernmental and cross-sector relationships that are intended to break down silos, right? The acronym, references federal information exchange because increasing access to EDA and other federal resources is certainly our key objective. But a successful FIRE event would also include and promote state, local, and non-federal sources of assistance that complement federal economic development investments. And the best use of these convenings is really with regional and local partners that are in the early stages of economic development planning and strategy. Maybe they're developing their CEDS priorities or plans for recovery from a natural or what we have now, a broad-based disaster, to adjust to different economic disruptions, plant closures, changing industries, and the like. The areas where regional planning and collaboration capacity is less developed, where those communities are really looking for information, connections, and idea exchange are the ones that we find benefit the most from this level of convening and engagement. And EDA can help our stakeholder communities by bringing the relevant federal partners to these tables. Next slide. So here's the other tangible way in which EDA has been promoting our integration assistance. First, I talked about FIREs. Now I'm going to talk about REDS. This stands for Regional Economic Diversification Summits. And again, this is just another way in which we offer integration assistance. We work with local hosts, communities, sometimes our economic development districts or universities, chambers of commerce, to assist them to convene, bring together the relevant federal stakeholders. This represents a deeper kind of technical assistance engagement between federal agencies and regional partners. It's really best when a community has developed their CEDS or their economic development strategy. They've talked about the priorities. They've gathered consensus on those priorities that require investment of multiple agencies, stacking different resources and moving forward in a coordinated way. And these are places that are really looking for guidance on how to fit and stack those resources together, how to avoid administrative pitfalls like duplicative procedures and conflicting requirements. This is an action-oriented process. It's project-oriented. It's outcome-oriented because it's specifically and intentionally designed to catalyze project implementation. So that is really the focus of this. It requires an investment of local leadership to design an agenda, to bring folks together, and to sustain engagement in these processes. It's really designed, as I said, to respond directly to locally identified economic development priorities. It's a way for EDA's economic development representatives, our integrators, and our other federal partners to leverage our collective experience and network relationships to help communities like Promise Zones, opportunities, and similar places to implement their priorities. The specific timing and location of a REDS event is left to the discretion of local and regional sponsors. What's important is that the REDS occur, at the right stage in the region's strategic planning cycle. So these convenings where the emphasis is on catalyzing projects are really most impactful in communities that have completed that planning stage and are now poised to commence project implementation. So this just summarizes some of the characteristics and the objectives. So we see these REDS events have been successful in communities that have completed their strategic planning, they've reached consensus on their priorities, and they've identified a number of specific projects that are in need of additional capital and support in order to proceed. So next slide, please. This slide here just gives you a sense of people who are engaged in the process I mentioned with EDA and our local partners, featuring a couple of REDS events, Regional Economic Diversification Summits, that we've held in the past in different parts of the country. One here in Weirton, West Virginia, was really acknowledged as a way to move projects forward that had been on the table for a while, and we're really looking for different federal agencies to come together and consider how to move those together. And in Port Townsend, Washington, similarly, it was really more than a planning charrette. It was an action together, bringing communities together with EDA, with federal partners, to explore funding sources that could be identified to advance their local development projects in that region and community. I would mention too, not shown here, but maybe of interest particularly to this audience, we did engage with the West Philadelphia Promise Zone in a REDS event like this back in 2018 with our EDA Regional Economic Development Integrator, Matthew Sukadolski, and our local partners there at the Enterprise Center and the Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission, bringing together folks there around diversifying, that community's economy with business incubation and innovation. And so that's giving you a flavor of how this kind of, it's not really a program, it's more of a process, and EDA is here to provide that kind of capacity building support through our EDI practice for these efforts. Next slide, please. So as promised, we have a lot of other resources available under what we call the Economic Development Integration Practice. These are posted on EDA's webpage. I mentioned previously, we've got some tools there, a matrix of economic development assistance programs in the federal government that have been authorized. Their availability dates are different, but they're there for you to see, and there's some categories there where you can begin to locate the resources that you might wish to pursue. These REDS events are a place to really put that into action. And we have a number of other integration tools and resources on our page, and the links are live in this slide here. The other work that we have been doing, as mentioned, is to help communities align their regional plans for economic development and community development. In particular, we have worked in the past with HUD to show where the alignment is between HUD consolidated planning and EDA's SEDS planning process. Currently working with FEMA with regard to hazard mitigation planning, very top of mind right now. And this is also relevant for regional transportation and infrastructure planning. So to the extent these can align, then resources can also be leveraged. And I would be remiss if I did not mention, again, as Milton identified, that the economic development integration is also where we house our economic recovery support function that EDA leads on behalf of Commerce, and this is part of the FEMA national framework. So when there is a significant disaster, and certainly now during the COVID crisis, we are there to provide interagency coordination and support on economic recovery to those communities. So our EDA staff are working with FEMA regions, state and local partners across the country right now to help communities coordinate resources for the long-term recovery that faces us all in that area. So let's see, next slide, please. So here's leaving you with some contacts here for more information, deeper dive into what we have given you the sense of today on this. Probably a best starting place, if communities don't already know them, is with the state representative for EDA that can be found here at EDA.gov contact. And you can find the individual and their email and reach out to them for conversation about your economic development projects. We do have a page for CARES Act assistance, which will give more information, including frequently asked questions about the CARES Act and EDA's assistance with regard to that. And we have information about opportunity zones. I know some of you are looking for information about promise zones, but there is really a high overlap between promise zones and opportunity zones. And you can visit this page to see the incentives that are available there to support investments in opportunity zones and where we've already invested. So it might be helpful to look at that list of projects and programs to get ideas that are featured there. Finally, the work that I talked about on economic development integration, you can always email us at edi@eda.gov to get in touch with the headquarters staff, or you can visit our webpage at eda.gov/EDI for information about all the things that I just spoke about. And we've also included the particular link there where you can get to the contact information for the regional economic development integrators at EDA, like Milton for our Atlanta region. And we have 5 other highly capable individuals who are also there developing interagency collaboration partnerships and working to support the capacity of local organizations in addition to the grant making that we do. So that's probably more than enough on who we are and what we do, but Milton and I stand ready to answer questions, Johnny, that have come into the chat box or that other folks want to ask at this time.
Well, thank you so much. That was a great presentation, great information that was shared. I do apologize. I had a few technical issues on my end, so I do appreciate your patience. So we're going to jump in on the chat box to see what questions we have. Let's see. So here. Okay. So Chancey, and I'm not going to attempt to pronounce your last name there, but you asked a question regarding how about promise zones in addition to opportunity zones, but I didn't know if you wanted to add a little more context to that to either Nancy or Milton. I tell you what,
right. Milton, did you want to cover that? I know you did mention that. We know that the promise zone designation was made years ago and is still in effect, and certainly communities There are continuing to work on economic development with or without a federal designation. It's the collaboration and the coalitions that matter quite a bit. And that really was behind a lot of the work that we do in economic development integration in particular, which is that we wanted a standing capacity for the collaboration that we do across agencies to break down silos and with communities to help them navigate resources that can stand the changes in initiatives over time so that we're still here to help with the Promise Zone. So, you know, Milton mentioned our whole suite of program resources at EDA is available to Promise Zones. And I would just highlight that there is, we've done some looking at the overlap, and there really is quite a bit of overlap based on the economic demographics and criteria for opportunity zones with Promise Zones. So to the extent you are in an opportunity zone, please do check out EDA's special needs criteria, which allows us to consider projects that we otherwise might not, that are in or near or benefiting opportunity zones. And also, we do have that investment priority that he mentioned for opportunity zones. So I know that's not Promise Zones, but that is certainly a relevant resource that we would want the folks on this session to better understand.
Another question, has EDA funded new markets tax credit projects?
So we have not crosswalked where those are, but certainly that is a resource that can be brought into a project and is the kind of leveraging that we consider to be highly valuable. So in terms of getting some examples of new market tax credit projects where that has been the investment stream, I don't have any off the top of my head, but I can say that a lot of times what we are doing is investing, as Milton said, in some of the infrastructure around a project that would help to make it possible for private investment to come in to a space to do that development. So Milton, do you want to add anything there? I know you featured some of those examples from the Atlanta Promise Zone area that may be relevant.
Yes, the Pittsburgh project, the 352 University Avenue project that I highlighted did in fact involve some new market tax credit, as did the Russell. But with that, there are some additional complications with new tax credit centered around the way the restrictions or the liens that may have to be placed to protect the federal interest, and that sometimes run afoul to the investors' interest. And that was one of the issues with the Russell. We had to pull some of that, our participation out of a portion of that project because of those challenges. But yes, we've done a number of projects with new market tax credit funding as part of the funding mechanism, but it does pose a little bit of a challenge in making sure that all the appropriate parties are in alignment with their interests in regards to securing their interests, because oftentimes our investments are in physical infrastructure that EDA seeks some protection of the federal interest that sometimes run afoul with the need for the investors to have lien-free or limited restrictions that the EDA may place on them.
All right, well, we have another question from Cynthia Abbott. Her question is, what does the REDS technical assistance look like in the age of virtual community engagement? I
love this question because we can answer it. Just yesterday, our regional economic development integrator, Carl Ann Unger in our Chicago regional office, who some of you might know from her engagement with the Promise Zone Coalition, she hosted with our University Center partner at Youngstown State University just yesterday a day-long convening that was a virtual convening for a regional economic development summit. So that's a REDS event that was held for the benefit of Lordstown, Ohio's regional strategies. And really, we've seen communities being nimble. We've seen some really creative ways of moving these REDS and FIRE events into the virtual environment. So we've had a number of virtual convenings similar to what you've organized here, hosted by our economic development district partners, our jurisdiction partners, our university center partners, and then we invite our federal partners to come in and share resources just like this. I think it establishes the communication, the connection, and then that work can continue hopefully afterwards as we normally do by phone and email exchange to keep those resources and connections rolling towards project implementation. But yeah, definitely we can do it in this environment. It's not maybe as great as the face-to-face convening, but it can happen, and we're so proud of the communities that have really embraced the challenge of doing things virtually, just as you're doing today.
Okay, so we have a question from Daryl. Are the EDA resources in using EDI initiatives limited to Promise Zone geographies?
No, they're available for everybody. So they're really stakeholder resources, and I think they're designed with the communities that we work with in mind. As Milton said, these are really all regions, but we particularly focused on regions that are distressed, that are coping with distress, looking for economic revitalization to assist communities in those areas, and also communities that are dealing with economic shocks, whether it's from a hurricane or a flood or a fire or a pandemic, or our traditional sort of economic shocks that were, closure of different industries. So we've certainly supported a lot of the communities, like in the Appalachian communities that have been transitioning their economies over the last several years to new economic opportunities.
We have a few more questions left. We have 18 minutes until the session is over, so we have a little more time. Tani Smith has a question. Are projects just on regional level, or can it be focused on a group of neighborhoods?
So I would say both and, I guess. The strategies and the plans that EDA emphasizes are regional because of the intersection of worksheds that cover regions. A regional economy really is a way to plan to make sure it's inclusive and that there's opportunities and sustained economic growth and competitiveness based on the assets of the whole region. But the beneficiaries and the applicants can be talking about a project in a neighborhood. And that's what Milton talked about in terms of the West Atlanta area where those projects are located. But Milton, do you want to add anything there in terms of, the locus of those projects?
Yeah, I think this kind of hones in on the reason I was placing emphasis on the importance of the SES and the SES process and engagement of all key stakeholders, and being in collaboration with, the entities that are eligible entities, local, state, city, and county governments, nonprofit organizations, working in collaboration with those dedicated state agencies, agencies within the state. So I shouldn't say agencies, those components of a state, city, or county governments. I think that's the importance to understand how EDA's approach to economic development, as Nancy's alluded to, is more of a regional approach, but we touch neighborhoods by their inclusion within those larger strategies and those larger economic development roadmap that would be captured if you're engaged in that SES process. I'm not sure if I exactly answered your question or not, but that's where your engagement or your interest could be represented and focused on as far as getting that federal and other resource support.
just to emphasize that too, real practical advice from Milton there is if there is a project that a community has, that they would come to EDA to seek assistance with financial assistance from one of our funding programs like Public Works or Economic Adjustment Assistance. Really what we will be looking for is how does this project align with the regional strategy? How does it support the regional strategy? And that's just what you know, we're talking about here. We don't want to do projects that are one-off, that are not connected to that holistic or comprehensive strategy. So that will be one of the criteria that the project is reviewed against, is how consistent it is, how does it align with that broader regional strategy. So if you're not familiar with what the regional strategy is in your area, and we don't have economic development districts that produce CEDS plans everywhere in the country. We have them in most places, but there are also equivalent comprehensive economic development strategies that have been developed by jurisdictions that would serve that same planning tool process.
We have a question from Eric Yost, our fellow HUD Community Liaison out of the Los Angeles Promise Zone. This question is, does EDA keep a master list of all CEDS across the country?
Hello, Eric. It's good to hear from him. He is a fantastic resource person, so it's not surprising that this would be his question. There is a place where EDA doesn't host it on our webpage, but we do have a national partner that is the Association of Economic Development Districts, and does a lot of work on highlighting the strongest CEDS and most creative CEDS strategies by those districts across the country. The organization is the National Association of Development Organizations, or NATO, and they have a CEDS Central website, which does have that library of CEDS plans that are posted there and easy to access and see, so you can really see a variety of different ways that communities, there's a lot of flexibility in how you build your CEDS to really reflect a locality's perspective, its priorities, and also its creativity. So we have some general guidelines and requirements for the CEDS, but if you check out that CEDS library, and I'll see if I can find the link and post it in the chat box, it is on the NATO.org website, and it's called CEDS Central. That's one place to find it. There's one other place that we like folks to go, which sort of cross-links to that, which is statsamerica.org. And I think Milton mentioned it in his presentation. That is a web page that EDA provides some technical assistance support to the University of Indiana to host that web page, which has sort of the demographic data that you would need in preparing your CEDS plan to see eligible areas. And it has a bunch of widgets on there with some great information to the Census Department's regional business builder, region builder, and also a CEDS library link there. So statsamerica.org, NATO.org, CEDS Central are two places where you can find those plans. If you do go on EDA's website, you can see the CEDS content guidelines there. And you can find in just our resource directory, it's an online resource directory, you can type in your state and you can see the economic development district that serves your state, or that the several that do, and reach out to them directly for more information on that. So that's another way to contact the organizations that are the planning bodies for economic development. I hope that's helpful.
Okay, sorry about that. I'm still having a few technical issues. Yeah. Okay.
Would you like some support, Danny?
Yeah, it looks like because I had to log back in with my check screen, so I believe there was one more continued follow-up question from Eric that I'm not able to access.
So while we're searching for Eric's follow-up question, we do have a question from Daryl, and it is, as an urban waters federal partner, Proctor Creek ambassador, how can we share a community-driven project proposal? And it also states, I am not sure it is part of a regional strategy.
Well, hello, Dara. I'm quite familiar with that project. First of all, we share an experience on a local development board, if you recall. But I'm quite familiar with the Urban Water Federal Partner Proctor Creek initiative there in the city of Atlanta. First thing, obviously, I would definitely direct you to contact our EDR from Georgia, who's probably on this call as well. So I'm going to give him some work. That would be Mr. Jonathan Corso, as a starting point to verify if, in fact, you are part of the Atlanta Regional Commission said, and I would think it would be, since you all have collaborated quite extensively with EPA and also Federal Highway, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. But that would be the first starting point, is to, if it's not included within the Atlanta Regional Commission said, work to try to get it part of that strategy, and have some discussion with Jonathan about what the proposal is and whether or not it's an eligible proposal that EDA could take a look at. It may be more in line with EPA's program, however, or even not knowing the nature of the proposal, but that would be some guidance I will give you at this point.
All right, thank you, Milton. Hope your question was satisfied, Daryl. So Eric's question was, EDA is currently reviewing and awarding CARES Act Economic Adjustment Assistance grant awards. If someone applies under the CARES Act and the money runs out, will their application be considered under normal appropriations funding, or do they need to reapply?
So I'm sure Milton can add more flavor to this, but I think the basic answer is that EDA anticipates that we will continue to receive annual appropriations, or at least we anticipate that we will continue to receive annual appropriations under our Economic Adjustment Assistance Program, which is the program that Congress's appropriation pointed to add the additional CARES Act funding. So once the project comes into our pipeline, I think the best course of action, if there are no CARES Act funds available, or if it's determined that that's not really the best fit for eligibility purposes, the CARES Act EAA funds is what we would say, then the next step is to go back and work again, and there will be communication with the state economic development representative, like Milton mentioned, who's really the link on developing that project, and they can advise, you know, what the next step will be, whether that can be considered under a different funding stream like our core program appropriations, or whether there are some additional development that needs to be done with that project. Milton, did you want to add something there? But I think the answer is sort of maybe, but you need to talk with the economic development representative at EDA on the best course of action. Milton?
Right, I can't add anything to that. I think you stated it as clearly as I would have.
Great.
All right, thank you for answering that, Nancy. Would love to ask, are there any other questions or comments that anyone would like to make? Please enter them into the chat box. We still have about 6 minutes allocated for this presentation. We'd love to answer any questions that anyone has, but if we don't have any more, we can start to close out the session. I'll give a couple moments to see if any questions are entered. Hope you all see that Nancy has entered in her email information if you'd like to reach out to her, and has also listed that you can use the EDA website to find EDI contacts. All right. Well, seeing no questions being added, but also seeing that Milton has also added his email information. So please jot that down, though we will be providing you with some opportunities to receive Nancy and Milton's information at a later time as well. But on behalf of Johnny, I want to thank our presenters. Johnny, we understand sometimes technical issues happen in our new pandemic world in which we're all doing video meetings, probably more than most people would like. But this has provided a great opportunity for us to hear this great information from Nancy and from Milton. So thank you on the behalf of the National Coalition of Promise Zones. I also want to thank all participants for joining us. We hope that this information was informative for you. But I like to encourage you to join the remaining presentations. And I have maybe a surprise announcement for some of you. We have added a special education presentation that will take place at 9 a.m. Pacific time, 11 a.m. Central Standard Time, and 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I know we got people from all across the country, so it's important to get those time zones correct for everyone. And we also have a presentation from the U.S. Attorney's Office, Reentry and Prevention. That will take place at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Also want to remind everyone that you can view the video recording of this presentation on the Sacramento Promise Zone Facebook page or the Sacramento Promise Zone YouTube channel. So you can just search for Sacramento Promise Zone and find that information, but we'll also send you out some information on how to access the recordings. And with that being said, we can close this presentation as long as you all enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.